How did we evolve from animals to human, and why is now a good time to tell this story? Hey everyone, I'm Michael Allen Prestwood, and this is The Birth of Language from Animal to Human. This is the story of evolution told through the lens of the increasing communication abilities of animals. This story is from my article, The Evolution of Vocabulary in Ancient Humans, available at touchstonetruth.com. We will tell this story in 3 parts: early mammals, the great apes, and humans. To get started, let's first frame this philosophically. What is it about our existence that drives us to seek answers about our origins? Is it our desire to understand our world, the divine plan, or both? Whether you believe in a higher power or the laws of physics, one thing is certain. We've been endowed with the gift of curiosity, the capacity to observe, and the drive to ask questions. Our journey from animal to human is also the story of our deep desire to understand our origins, not just as a biological process, but as a philosophical journey. Why now? You live in a time with access to knowledge our ancestors could only imagine. For millennia, people have pondered the universe's size, age, and origins. In recent centuries, our understanding has skyrocketed, leading to a well-founded origin story based on observation and physical laws. This is that story. If you believe in a higher power, consider this. That power has given us the ability to observe, to question, and to seek truth in the world around us. Evolution may seem in conflict with some current religious beliefs, but religions evolve. Throughout history, religions have always adapted to new realities. Within a century, I believe we'll see the major religions embracing empirical observations, harmonizing the expanding universe and the story of evolution with their spiritual teachings. Their focus will remain on what it means to live ethically, and they will continue to explore the mysteries of existence, exploring the known and providing answers for the unknown and the unknowable. And yes, a belief in a higher power for many will almost for sure be a part of our future forever. And yes, we are animals. I hope that doesn't offend you, because your origin story is amazing. It is interesting, complex, and full of wonderful details. Part 1 of 3, Early Mammals. We'll pick up our story with mammals, which evolved from fish, which evolved into amphibians, then reptiles. Among these reptiles, we mammals evolved from a group called synapsids. Dinosaurs branched off around this time too. Just as Dr. Strange had an origin story involving the mystical arts and multiple realities, you too have an origin story, and unlike Marvel's, your story is true and more interesting. The truth is, humans are one of the species that inhabit this planet. Yet as we go about our daily lives, it's easy to forget that fact. We like to think of ourselves as something special, and we are. We may not have tails or fur, but that doesn't mean we're not animals. We evolved from them. One of the traits that sets us apart from our furry and feathered friends is our capacity to tell stories. Here, we're going to use that very gift to tell the story of our journey from animal to human. Fasten your seatbelts. We're going back in time millions of years to uncover your origin story. A journey that takes us from the squeaks of animals to the eloquence of Shakespeare. We will tell our own story using our own storytelling abilities, a world ruled by far larger, more powerful creatures. Let's start our journey 100 million years ago, at the dawn of communication among our ancestors. Using the Occam approach, we can infer that basic mammalian communication began here, with a common ancestor shared by the likes of wolves and humans. And what's fascinating is that all mammals branching off from this ancestor use many of the same words. And yes, I know words isn't exactly the right term, but philosophically here we're using terms like words, vocabulary, and language to represent what scientists would simply call communication. Okay, so whether it's dogs, cats, sea lions, or even smarter animals like raccoons, dolphins, and monkeys. They are all born into a group that has developed their own vocabulary, their own language, a language that was built from instinct and environment and refined with experience. Yes, the very act of living and interacting creates vocabulary. For some, their vocabulary ranges from a dozen to even thousands of various signals. Take wolves. A howl is a howl, a growl is a growl. It doesn't matter where the wolf comes from. Playful and aggressive gestures are things even different species can identify. When a large animal charges, every creature, big and small, understands it's time for fight or flight. This tells us something profound. All animals, including humans, learn by impressions. Yes, we have varying mammalian brains and varying senses, but we share common ancestors and can trace our common abilities back to them. It's why two wolves that have never met can still communicate. Scent evolved early. Before gestures, before squeaks, and yes, scent is part of our vocabulary and it is vital for survival. It is a crucial part of animal life on Earth. Imagine a world where communication wasn't about sounds, but about smells. Taste and smell, known as chemoreception, evolved about 600 million years ago. That's about 200 million years after basic touch evolved, and about 60 million years before vision evolves. Yes, evolution truly is slow on a human scale, but on a cosmic scale, it is predictable, normal, and very fast. Around 160 million years ago, early mammals developed apocrine glands that help them regulate their body temperature and, more importantly, communicate. These glands released scents that could be used to identify friends and foes, signal when they were ready to mate, and even mark their territory. Think about dogs. How they use scent to communicate with other dogs and to track things. This kind of communication was a crucial step in the evolution of social interactions. It laid the groundwork for the development of more complex communication, languages in our philosophical view here. So, let's fast forward a bit. Modern mammals still use a range of signals to communicate. These forms of abstract vocabulary include smells, all kinds of sounds, and various visual hints, including gestures and postures. Think about wolves. They have a rich tapestry of communication signals. They howl to signal their location, growl to assert dominance, and use body postures to convey submission, aggression, or affection. And this early foundation of dozens of signals provided the building blocks for even more complex communication systems. As the branches of the mammalian family tree evolved, so did our cognitive abilities. Sure, we learn by experience, but how much and how fast we can learn is limited by our brains. And while a big brain might be a drain on energy, it's also a powerful survival tool. Now let's shift our focus a bit more toward human evolution. Part 2 of 3, The Great Apes. The primate story is a story that spans about 40 million years from New World monkeys to the great apes. It's reasonable to assume that our ancestors millions of years ago were similar to the great apes we see today. They likely grunted and gestured, using a vocabulary of thousands of signals. But let's go back further in our ancestry. Baboons split off 27 million years ago. They were probably a lot like the baboons we see today. Smaller brains, grunts, gestures, and a vocabulary of hundreds. But over millions of years, the cognitive abilities of our ancestors continued to grow. Gibbons split off about 17 million years ago, with a different group, the great apes, splitting off about the same time. Each new word they added came from their daily experience, survival, and interaction with their environment. Communication became a critical survival tool, and those with better language skills lived longer and reproduced more successfully. Long before the orangutans branched off around 12 million years ago, all great apes had developed a vocabulary. Signals, gestures, grunts, and screams used in various contexts. Their communication wasn't just diverse, but nuanced. For instance, a scream could mean many things. Danger from above, danger on the ground, a distant threat, or imminent peril. These signals had layers of meaning, depending on the situation. This was the foundation for the first words as we understand them today. Take Rudopithecus hungaricus, a great ape from 11 million years ago, which almost for sure had a vocabulary of thousands in various contexts. Just like we see in all great apes today. Living in lush forests, our ancestors relied on effective communication to thrive. From here, the stage was set for the development of language in the journey from animal to human. As they adapted to their environments and the generations rolled on, their cognitive abilities improved, allowing them to add new vocabulary. So, you see, language didn't spring up overnight. It was a gradual process. Gorillas branched off about 10 million years ago. Gigantopithecus branched off about 9 million years ago. The biggest great ape ever, it lived until about 100,000 years ago. Over millions of years, vocabulary gradually expanded within one group, then another, branching out, moving to new areas, and branching again. Though slow by human standards, this process led to varying levels of survival and reproductive success. For some groups, it resulted in the refinement of signals and the enhancement of cognitive abilities. Chimpanzees likely branched off about 7.5 million years ago. We are the only surviving species from here, but much was already set. Take laughter, for example. Laughter is a highly social form of communication, with an extensive vocabulary that conveys nuanced meanings like, play with me, this is fun, that was awesome, watch this, okay, enough, stop, more, and I'm done. This complex vocabulary of laughter started emerging around 35 to 40 million years ago in the ancestors of New World monkeys. We see early hints of this in capuchin monkeys, who exhibit a tickle-induced vocalization that is likely a precursor to laughter. As primates evolved, so did the vocabulary of laughter. Around 27 million years ago, Old World monkeys like baboons developed even more complex laughter-like behaviors, using pant-pant-ha sounds to convey playful intentions. With baboons, laughter can say, let's play, I'm excited, or I'm having fun. Fast forward to our great ape ancestors, and we see human-like laughter starting to emerge around 14.5 million years ago. This evolving vocabulary of laughter continued to expand, with our truly human laugh, with its characteristic sounds and expressions, settling about 3 million years ago. We split from a branch of chimpanzee ancestors sometime before 5 million years ago. During this time, around 3 to 5 million years ago, our ancestors started using more advanced proto-language. It was simpler than modern languages, but more complex than our great ape cousins use. It was a mix of grunts, gestures, and nuanced vocalizations. These early attempts at communication gradually became more complex. Each group of hominins developed their own way, based on their cognitive abilities and environment. Each individual was born into their way of life and a way to communicate. Each learned the same way we do, through experience, through one day-to-day impression at a time. These early languages were not innate, but rather learned and adapted through the brain's ability to learn and adapt. They formed the foundation for future traditions and even for philosophy. Imagine standing in the African savannas 4 million years ago. Our ancestors, perhaps Australopithecines, roamed these lands. They were using simple sounds and gestures to communicate, forming a rudimentary form of language. This early communication was essential for survival. They used it to coordinate hunting, to gather food, and to care for their young. It was the start of something deeply human, the desire to understand and be understood. A specific grunt could signal food while another alerted the group to danger. Gestures were just as important. A raised arm might mean come here, while a pointed finger could indicate over there. These things formed a primitive vocabulary, likely numbering into the thousands for most groups. Coordination for hunting, gathering, and caring for offspring relied on these early communication efforts. Studies on primates give us insight into these early systems. Chimpanzees used gestures and sounds for grooming, playing, and warning of danger. Here's your takeaway for this time period. Our Australopithecine ancestors from about 4 million years ago almost for sure possessed communication abilities far more advanced than today's chimpanzees. After another very long stretch of time, we find ourselves at the start of the Paleolithic era. Part 3 of 3, Humans. The story of humans is the story of the Paleolithic era. The Paleolithic era is the story of humanity starting at 3.3 million years ago. Traditionally, this splits into upper, middle, and lower. For this final part of our journey, we'll use the holistic Paleolithic framework, available at touchstonetruth.com, to split it into 6 ages: stone, fire, cultural, symbolic, cognitive, and prehistory. As we enter the Paleolithic era, we enter the age of ancient humans, the species Homo. This is when the brains and communication abilities of our ancestors start to take a significant leap forward. This period sees the emergence of simple language. It was likely a set of grunts and gestures, but still this is the start of very simple stories. Stories like, you, come here, eat. Homo habilis might have been the first to use words in a way we might recognize, maybe. Even more likely was Homo erectus, which emerged about 1.9 million years ago. It is reasonable to conclude that during the Stone Age, between 3.3 and 1.5 million years ago, is the time when grunts started turning into proto-words. Simple stories like, over there a tiger is hunting. Paleoneurology, the study of fossilized skulls, reveals an increase in brain size and complexity over millions of years, particularly in areas associated with language and social interaction. This intricate relationship between brain development and communication reflects the deep connection between our biological evolution and cultural advancements. It's hard for us to imagine the duration of a decade, yet decades do come and go. A lifetime is forever in our human conception of the passing of time. It is very difficult for us to conceptualize a millennium, but thinking of 1,000 years as 40 generations does help. For our ancestors, as the millennia rolled on, their communication evolved, mirroring and intertwined with the gradual advancements in cognitive ability and social structures. For each generation, their language evolved to meet their needs. Our ancestors are no longer relying solely on simple grunts and gestures. They are developing a complex language, laying the groundwork for the intricate verbal communication we use today. Starting about 2.6 million years ago, something special was happening at the lush landscapes of Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, Africa, the building of stone tools. While wood tools were for sure being crafted long before this, they did not survive the test of time. However, we have clear evidence our ancestors crafted stone tools. It is a known cradle of human innovation that survived the test of time. They used gestures and sounds to share information, how to find food, craft tools, and avoid dangers. This vibrant scene transports you to a bustling group of early hominins, living their lives well lived. Their stone tool workshop existed for about 1.5 million years, among the distinctive tough cones and sedimentary pillars. That's roughly 60,000 generations of our ancestors. And here's the magical takeaway. This buried treasure trove was discovered in the 1930s at Olduvai Gorge. It's not the only one. We found many artifacts and many more are still buried. But sadly, the vast majority of human activity over the last 2 million years is lost to the sands of time. Picture an elder teaching a younger member of the group to make a stone tool using gestures and sounds. Because of this cultural transmission, by 500,000 years ago, composite tools emerged. These early teachings laid the foundation for the oral traditions that would later define human culture. Simple stories about survival, danger, and the way to live life, their way. Language began to emerge, creating a shared knowledge base that enhanced group survival. As we continue our journey, we enter the Fire Age about 60,000 generations ago. It spanned from 1.5 million to 800,000 years ago, a time of both cognitive advancement and the mastery of fire. Fire artifacts such as hearths, burned bones, and charred plants show us much. They give us evidence for how early humans used fire for warmth, protection, and cooking. Here is a critical takeaway for you. Many of our ancient human cousin species lived at the same time, in different areas, separately evolving. By this time, Australopithecines were extinct. This was the time of other hominins, including Homo habilis. They might have looked more like a primate, or perhaps more like a human. And it was the time of Homo erectus. We think they looked a bit more human, maybe. Our increased intelligence not only allowed us to master fire, but it also gave us the ability for improved survival, a time that reshaped social structures and influenced day-to-day living and our culture. The Fire Age marks a significant leap in cognitive advancements in various groups of ancient humans. Inhabited by various hominins, including Homo erectus and Homo antecessor, this is the period that likely witnessed the emergence of Proto-True language. Fast forward to 1 million years ago and picture a group of early humans gathering around a fire at dusk. With larger brains and more intricate social structures, they share simple stories, not just about survival, but about their experiences, their environment, and their social norms. Far from modern speech, their proto-language almost for sure included thousands of sound and gesture combinations, allowing for a new depth of expression. These shared stories help build social bonds and strengthen the group. By this time, their proto-language has become more sophisticated. From these species, or ones like them, our ancestors, Homo heidelbergensis and Neanderthals, will emerge, and eventually Homo sapiens too. Each represents another leap in the complexity of communication. About 32,000 generations ago, we enter the Cultural Age. It spanned from 800,000 to 440,000 years ago. During this time, we witness a period of rapid brain growth and significant cultural advancements. This era marks the rise of human-like culture, where nature and nurture intertwine to shape our ancestors' development. By around this time, our modern human-like hyoid bone had evolved. This is believed to be a sign of talking. It might have evolved earlier, but it's a fragile fossil, and we have yet to find an earlier sample. The Cultural Age aligns with the theory of gene-culture coevolution, a concept explored by thinkers like Richard Dawkins and Steven Pinker. This theory suggests that cultural advancements drive genetic changes, which in turn enable further cultural developments, creating a feedback loop. Dawkins introduced the idea of memes, units of cultural information that evolve much like genes, Terence Deacon in The Symbolic Species builds on this idea, arguing that language and symbolic thought co-evolved with our brain structures, shaping the way we think and communicate. During this period, we see the end of Homo antecessor and the emergence of Homo heidelbergensis. These early humans built more sophisticated homes, gained better control over fire, possibly even worshipping it, and developed enhanced communication, including proto-language. These cultural advancements likely drove brain evolution, reinforcing the cultural feedback loop. Imagine Homo heidelbergensis gathering around a fire, using more advanced communication and social structures. This era saw the rise of cultural transmission, where knowledge was passed down through simple oral traditions. These early humans were not just surviving, they were sharing ideas, shaping their environment, and building the foundations of human culture. Their proto-languages, though still rudimentary, enabled complex tool-making, social organization, and the sharing of knowledge across communities. As we transition into the Symbolic Age, about 17,600 generations ago, about 440,000 to about 125,000 years ago, symbolic thought stabilized, particularly in the common ancestor of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. During this time is when Homo heidelbergensis went extinct, perhaps around 200,000 years ago. It's possible and even likely that Homo heidelbergensis and Neanderthals occasionally ran into each other. This period marked the final stages of brain development, with our ancestors reaching a cognitive ability within the lower range of modern humans. During this time, we see the gradual emergence of symbolic behavior. Exhibit 1 for this is Neanderthal art, which suggests symbolic thought may have developed before 440,000 years ago. This age saw the development of proto-languages and more sophisticated forms of communication. Cognitive evolution was slow, but the spread of new traits through cultural transmission helped shape early human societies. By this time, humans were likely nurturing their own cultures, using rudimentary communication methods, and forming more complex social structures. We see evidence of early symbolic behavior, the use of ochre for body painting. This symbolic behavior included the construction of burial sites, indicating a deeper understanding of life and death. The emergence of true language, shaped by the forces of gene-culture coevolution, laid the foundation for human societies as we know them today. This era not only marked a leap in cognitive ability, but also in cultural expression, with language becoming the vehicle for passing down traditions, stories, and the wisdom of our ancestors. Discoveries like the 290,000-year-old ancient art in India support this. This is a time before our arrival in that region. Art represents symbolic thought, a significant step in cognitive ability. The first art was likely created by Homo erectus or Homo heidelbergensis. As brain size increased, particularly in Homo heidelbergensis and early Neanderthals, so did their ability to communicate more intricately. With larger brains, ancient humans could process and produce more complex forms of communication. Studies on the FOXP2 gene, often called the language gene, suggest that these ancestors possessed the genetic makeup necessary for advanced speech and language. It suggests that our ancestors had the foundation for advanced speech long before Homo sapiens. The question scholars are now grappling with is, how far back did these stories go? 500,000 years? 1 million? 2 million? What we know for sure is that ancient humans were far more complex than the grunting brutes of popular entertainment. Starting about 5,000 generations ago, we enter the cognitive age, an age spanning from 125,000 years ago to 50,000 BCE, a time of the final subtle cognitive revolution in human evolution. This period marks the evolution of the last increments of our raw mental abilities. Yuval Noah Harari suggests in Sapiens that this is when humans develop the ability to collectively believe in and rally around shared ideas, stories, and goals. Whether this idea fully pans out or not, we know that during this time, isolated groups evolved their own traits, mixed with others, and the most mentally advanced survived more frequently. This led to the modern human brain we recognize today. Exhibit 1 for the start of the cognitive age is DNA evidence, with Adam and Eve as great examples. This refers to haplogroup A, Adam, and haplogroup L, Eve. DNA evidence conclusively shows that every human alive today shares these common ancestors. They both lived in Africa, Adam about 275,000 years ago, and Eve about 175,000 years ago. At the beginning of this age, our ancestors had roughly the same raw mental abilities as we do today. We even have stone figurines dating to about 290,000 years ago. Likely by 200,000 years ago, humans had developed complex languages. With intricate grammar and syntax, this is the likely start of human oral traditions. By this time, we were likely very capable of conveying the full spectrum of human experience. This linguistic complexity allowed for the transmission of detailed knowledge, elaborate storytelling, and intricate social structures. Starting about 2,000 generations ago, we enter the final age we will cover here. This is the age of human prehistory, a period specifically defined by the holistic Paleolithic framework, beginning in 50,000 BCE and spanning until 4,000 BCE. This definition offers a twist on traditional Paleolithic ideas. This is the time by which our ancestors' cognitive abilities were the same as ours, a time in which our unique and varied cultures emerged and flourished, a time for human stories. Exhibit 1 for setting our prehistory to at least 50,000 years ago is the Sentinelese people, genetically isolated for at least 50,000 years. Their cognitive abilities are the same as with other human populations, reinforcing the idea that modern human cognitive abilities were fully developed at least 60,000 years ago. Isolated, they survived and built a rich hunter-gatherer culture. So what happened to the other hominins? Our current thought is that Denisovans and Neanderthals were the last of our cousin humans to survive. Denisovans are known to have made detailed jewelry. Current thought is that the last of the Denisovans went extinct in Siberia about 40,000 BCE. We believe that Neanderthals lasted until about 30,000 BCE. We have many artifacts from our prehistory, and we even have some early proto-writing. This ancient wooden tablet, etched with intricate symbols, dates back over 7,000 years, making it one of the oldest examples of proto-writing ever found. The evolution of complex language laid the groundwork for the development of writing systems around 5,000 years ago. Writing allowed for the accurate recording of history, codification of laws, and flourishing of literature and science. With writing, civilizations could accumulate and transmit vast amounts of knowledge, fostering technological advancements and complex societal structures. Today, we live in a time where readily available knowledge exceeds our cognitive abilities, testing the vast capabilities of the human mind. The story of language is a testament to the extraordinary adaptability and ingenuity of humanity, a narrative that continues to unfold with each passing generation. Understanding this journey illuminates our past and enriches our appreciation of the sophisticated communication that defines us as a species. I'm Michael Allen Prestwood, and I hope you enjoy the story of how we began telling stories. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more like this, please like this video. If you're new here, consider subscribing and joining our community of curious thinkers at touchstonetruth.com.